During the early 2000s, Mexican and Colombian drug cartels were generating immense profits from their narcotics trade. The Sinaloa cartel and the Norte del Valle cartel, among others, faced a significant challenge: how to launder billions of dollars in illicit drug proceeds. To integrate this dirty money into the legitimate financial system, they needed a reliable banking partner that would turn a blind eye to suspicious activities. HSBC Mexico department proved to be the perfect candidate.
It's a case of another financial institution, another scandal. Top executives in the global banking giant HSBC have faced a grilling by US politicians after a Senate investigation found the bank had given terrorists and drug dealers access to America's financial system.
What's a bank got to do to get into some real trouble around here?
Exactly, and what's amazing about that is that's Forbes saying that. I mean, HSBC has now admitted to is more or less the worst behavior that a bank could possibly be guilty of.
The roots of HSBC's involvement with drug cartels can be traced back to its operations in Mexico. The bank's anti-money laundering controls were grossly inadequate, and its oversight was practically non-existent. This lack of stringent controls allowed drug traffickers to exploit the bank's weaknesses, depositing vast sums of cash without raising alarms. Over time, more than $670 billion in wire transfers and $9.4 billion in physical dollars flowed through HSBC's U.S. operations from Mexico, unmonitored, facilitated by these lax controls. Cartels and criminal organizations are known for money laundering, normally consisting of this three-step process. Placement. The dirty money enters the financial system through methods like bank deposits, using the money for gambling, or buying valuable items. In this phase, using businesses that naturally deal with large volumes of cash, such as restaurants, bars, or casinos, to mix illicit funds with legitimate takings. Layering. This is the building of complex layers of financial transactions, putting distance between the dirty money and its source. This is designed to make it more difficult for auditors to follow the trail. In this phase, moving funds between various accounts in different names and countries, while also using trade transactions to disguise the movement of money, such as over or under invoicing goods and services, is vital for big-time crime operations. Integration. The final stage where the laundered money is reintroduced into the economy as legitimate funds. Now that the money is clean, they can use laundered money as collateral for loans and mortgages, effectively legitimizing the funds through repayment. Also invest into bigger, flashier ventures like sport companies and mega resorts.
Jump in here. The point is that we're not talking bit part players. We're talking terrorists, rogue states, various other undesirables. Money was laundered. Now, nobody's saying that you should resign. It is a point about knowing, taking responsibility. It happened during your watch. The buck stops with you. You're the man in charge.
But as I say, you have to distinguish between whether he knew and let it go ahead, or whether he was unaware of what was happening. If he was aware of what was happening and did nothing about it, he is patently culpable. However, given the character of Lord Green, it is quite clear that if he had any inkling whatsoever that this was going to be going on, he would have stamped on it immediately.
The process of laundering money through HSBC was relatively straightforward but highly effective. Due to the bank's inadequate monitoring systems, these transactions went largely unchecked. HSBC's compliance failures were not limited to a lack of oversight in Mexico. The bank's global operations were riddled with similar issues. HSBC stripped identifying information from transactions, making it difficult to trace the origins of the funds. This practice, known as stripping, allowed the cartels to move money across borders without detection. The Sinaloa cartel alone managed to funnel at least $881 million in drug proceeds through HSBC accounts. In 2008, Mexican authorities informed the CEO of HSBC Mexico that they possessed an audio recording of a Mexican drug kingpin, claiming HSBC Mexico was the place to go when laundering cash. One memorable detail U.S. law enforcement noted was that Mexican drug cartel members employed boxes customized to fit the dimensions of an HSBC Mexico teller window for their daily cash deposits. Moreover, HSBC violated U.S. sanctions by conducting business with countries and entities on the specially designated nationals list, including Iran, North Korea, and Sudan. These violations further illustrated the bank's systematic disregard for compliance and regulatory requirements. Was this a loophole that the cartels were manipulating, or a complicit conspiracy between the banks, cartels, and regulators? It's a question that lingers, haunting the halls of one of the world's largest financial institutions, HSBC. But was HSBC merely negligent, or was there something more sinister at play? The bank's violations of U.S. sanctions, doing business with countries like Iran and North Korea, raise an eyebrow or two. Stripping information from transactions wasn't just careless, it was deliberate. And then, the regulators. Where were they in all of this? The scandal began to unravel in 2012 when U.S. authorities, including the Department of Justice and the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, launched a comprehensive investigation into HSBC's practices. The investigation uncovered a staggering array of compliance failures. HSBC had failed to file thousands of suspicious activity reports, SARs, critical for identifying and reporting potentially illicit activities. The bank's AML program was grossly understaffed and overwhelmed, with insufficient resources to handle the volume of transactions requiring scrutiny, allowing the cartel's money laundering operations to continue unabated for years. HSBC was fined a record $1.9 billion. This settlement included over $1.2 billion in forfeiture and $665 million in civil penalties. The bank also entered into a deferred prosecution agreement admitting to its AML failures and agreeing to implement comprehensive reforms. Under the DPA, the bank was required to overhaul its compliance programs, hire additional staff, and enhance training for its employees. The bank invested heavily in advanced technology to improve the detection and reporting of suspicious transactions. Additionally, an independent compliance monitor was appointed to oversee HSBC's progress and ensure adherence to the agreed-upon reforms. For years, these activities went unchecked. Was it incompetence, or was there a more troubling collusion? HSBC moved billions of dollars in cash from its affiliate in Mexico to the U.S., more than any other Mexican bank by a large sum, despite concerns raised by authorities that such sums could only involve proceeds from illegal narcotics. In 2008, Leopoldo Barroso, the director of anti-money laundering at HSBC's Mexico unit, told the banking group's chief compliance officer that there were allegations that as much as 70% of laundered proceeds in Mexico went through their bank. The executive in Mexico told his counterpart in London that it was only a matter of time before the bank faced criminal sanctions. You see, this was not just a financial scandal. It was a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities and moral failings of our global banking system. The HSBC saga reminds us that when it comes to money and power, the lines are always dangerously thin. But was it just a failure of the banking system, or something far greater?
Now, HSBC paid a fine, but no one individual went to trial, no individual was banned from banking, and there was no hearing to consider shutting down HSBC's activities here in the United States. What does it take? How many billions of dollars do you have to launder for drug lords, and how many economic sanctions do you have to violate before someone will consider shutting down a financial institution like this? If you're caught with an ounce of cocaine, the chances are good you're going to go to jail. If it happens repeatedly, you may go to jail for the rest of your life. But evidently, if you launder nearly $1 billion for drug cartels and violate our international sanctions, your company pays a fine and you go home and sleep in your own bed at night. Every single individual associated with this. And I think that's fundamentally wrong.